I knew exactly what they thought of me. The moment she laughed at my shoes. Have you ever walked into a room and felt dismissed before you even spoke? That quiet kind of judgment, polite on the surface, sharp underneath. That was the air the second I stepped inside. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The restaurant was the kind of place where nothing was accidental. Crystal glasses caught the light just right. Soft piano notes drifted through the room like they belonged there more than people did. Even the silence felt expensive. And then there was me, 67 years old, Elawan Virel, wearing a coat that had seen better days, shoes that didn't shine, no jewelry, no statement, nothing that demanded attention. Exactly as I intended. Across the room, my son stood up the moment he saw me. Calum, 34, nervous smile, tight shoulders. "Mum," he said, pulling me into a brief hug. His voice was warm, but strained. That's when I saw them, seated already, watching, measuring. Marceline Drow, poised like she had never been uncertain a day in her life. Every detail about her was controlled, from her posture to the faint curve of her lips. Beside her, Oric Drow, silent, still, the kind of man who didn't waste words because he didn't need to. And next to them, Ceres, their daughter, my son's fiancée, softer, kinder, maybe, but not untouched by them. I smiled, sat down, folded my hands neatly in front of me, and then it happened, a whisper, soft, careless, not meant for me, but not careful enough either. "This is her?" A pause, then a quiet laugh, not loud, not cruel in volume, but precise. I didn't react, not outwardly. Because here's the thing, I hadn't come to impress them. I had come to see them. You might be wondering, why would anyone do this? Why walk into a room ready to be underestimated? Because people tell the truth when they think you're beneath them. And already they had started talking. I picked up the menu slowly, as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't already learned something important in the first 10 seconds, but inside, I was listening to everything, watching every glance, every hesitation, every choice. Because this dinner, it wasn't about meeting them. It was about deciding if I would ever trust them with my son. And they had no idea they were already failing. He didn't insult me directly, not at first. You know that kind of conversation, the one where everything sounds polite, but nothing feels kind. That's how it began. Menus opened, glasses adjusted, small talk floated across the table like it had been rehearsed. But pay attention to this, because what wasn't said mattered more than what was. Marceline leaned slightly toward Calum, her smile smooth, controlled. "So, Calum, tell us more about the expansion you mentioned. Not we, not all of us, just him." Oric nodded faintly, eyes fixed on my son like he was evaluating an investment. "Growth requires discipline," he added, "and the right foundation." I sat there, hands folded, listening. No one asked me anything, not where I came from, not what I did, not even how I was. And when I spoke, I've always preferred a quiet life," I said lightly at one point. Marceline gave a quick nod, too quick. "How simple," she replied. "Simple, such a harmless word, isn't it? Until you hear how it's used." Calum shifted in his seat. He noticed. Of course he did. But he didn't interrupt, not yet. Ceres glanced at me once or twice, like she wanted to say something, but every time her mother spoke first, redirected, controlled. Then came the questions, not curious ones, careful ones. "And what is it you do, Elawan?" Marceline asked, tilting her head slightly. I met her gaze calmly. "I used to work in logistics. I'm retired now. No elaboration, no numbers, no titles." Her smile didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. Filed away, categorized, dismissed. Auric leaned back slightly. Retirement requires preparation," he said. I nodded once. "It does." A pause followed, long enough to feel intentional. Then the server arrived. Marceline didn't hesitate. She ordered the most expensive wine on the menu without asking anyone else. And then, just for a second, her eyes flicked to my coat hanging on the chair. It was subtle, quick, but it was enough, because in that glance there was no curiosity, only conclusion. I kept my expression neutral, but inside, I was starting to see the shape of it. This wasn't just about dinner. This was evaluation, hierarchy, placement. And then, just as the server stepped away, Marceline leaned closer to Ceres again. "At least he's done well, despite..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Because this time, I knew exactly who she meant. And more importantly, I realized something else. They weren't just judging me. They were deciding what I was worth to them. The moment the food arrived, they stopped pretending. Have you ever noticed how people drop the mask once they think they understand you? That's exactly what happened next. Plates were set down. Steam curled into the air. Everything looked perfect. But the tone, it shifted. Marceline set her glass down gently, then smiled at Ceres. "We've been discussing venues," she began, her voice light but deliberate. "There's a beautiful estate outside Valmere. Private, very exclusive." Ceres nodded a little too quickly. "It's stunning," she added. Then Marceline's eyes moved, slowly, deliberately, toward Calum. "Of course," she continued, "events of that scale require cooperation from both families." There it was, not a suggestion, an expectation. Auric leaned forward slightly, folding his hands. "A union reflects more than two individuals," he said. "It reflects background, stability, capability." Capability, such a careful word. Calum's posture stiffened. I saw it instantly, the way his shoulders tightened, the way his hand hovered near his glass but didn't quite reach it. He understood what they were implying, and he didn't like it, but he didn't stop it either. I remained quiet, listening, letting them continue, because the more comfortable they became, the more honest they would be. Marceline finally turned to me again, that same polished smile. "We understand not everyone contributes equally," she said gently. "But expectations must remain realistic." Realistic, another harmless word, until it isn't. I tilted my head slightly. "Of course," I replied, calm, even. For a moment something flickered across her face. Satisfaction, maybe, like a conclusion had just been confirmed. Auric let out a quiet chuckle, barely above a breath. "Presentation matters," he added, "first impressions especially." And just like that, his gaze dropped briefly to my coat again, not hidden this time, deliberate. Across the table, Ceres shifted uncomfortably. She noticed. She definitely noticed, but she said nothing. That silence, it said more than any words could have. The conversation moved on, but the damage was already done. They had decided who I was, and worse. They had decided what my son should carry because of it. And then came the moment that changed everything. The server returned, quiet, professional, and placed the bill discreetly near the center of the table. No announcement, no interruption, just a small leather folder. But Marceline didn't hesitate. She slid it smoothly, confidently, across the table, directly to Kylam. No discussion, no glance toward me, just expectation. Kylam froze. His fingers didn't move. His eyes flickered, first to the bill, then to me. And in that single moment, everything they believed about me hung in the air. I let the silence stretch, then slowly, deliberately, I reached forward and placed my hand over the bill. He looked at my hand like it didn't belong there. Have you ever broken an unspoken rule in a room and felt everything shift? That's what this was. My fingers rested lightly on the edge of the bill, not forceful, not dramatic, just certain. Kylam leaned closer, his voice low. "Mom, it's okay, I've got it." He thought he was protecting me. Across the table, Marceline didn't say a word, but her expression changed. Subtle, curious, like she was watching a scene take an unexpected turn. Auric leaned back slightly, one brow lifting, observing, calculating again. Good, let them watch. I didn't move my hand. Instead, I looked toward the server, who had been waiting quietly nearby. "Could I see the itemized invoice, please?" I asked. Not loud, not sharp, just clear. And that's when the first crack appeared. Marceline's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. Auric's posture shifted forward, ever so slightly, because something didn't match anymore. My tone didn't belong to the version of me they had already decided on. The server returned quickly, placing the detailed bill in front of me. I glanced at it briefly, not because I needed to calculate, but because I wanted them to see me do it. Precision matters, especially to people who think in numbers. Then I spoke again. "If this evening is about expectations," I said calmly, "then I believe clarity is important." Silence. Not polite silence. Tense silence. The kind where people start rethinking everything they assumed just minutes ago. From my coat pocket I pulled out a small worn wallet, the same one they had already dismissed without a second thought. I opened it slowly. No rush. No hesitation. And then I placed the card on the table. Simple. Black. Unremarkable. Unless you knew what you were looking at. The server did. The shift was immediate, subtle but undeniable, posture straighter, tone more attentive. "Of course, ma'am," he said, with a level of respect that hadn't been there before. Marceline saw it, Auric saw it, and for the first time all evening, they weren't certain anymore. I didn't explain, not yet. I simply nodded to the server. "Go ahead." No hesitation, no discussion. The payment processed in seconds, quiet, efficient, final, and just like that, the balance at the table tilted. No one spoke, because now the question wasn't who I was, it was how wrong they had been. I folded my hands again just like I had at the beginning, calm, composed, unchanged. Then slowly I lifted my gaze and met Marceline's eyes directly for the first time. "Now," I said softly, "shall we talk about expectations?" And in that moment, no one at that table was comfortable anymore. "Now, shall we talk about expectations?" Silence answered me first. Not confusion, not denial. Recognition. Marceline was the first to recover, of course she was. Her posture straightened, her expression smoothing over like nothing had happened. "Well," she said lightly, "it seems we may have misread the situation." Misread. Such a careful way to describe something deliberate. I didn't smile back. "I don't believe you misread anything," I replied calmly. "I believe you assessed exactly what you thought was in front of you." Oric leaned forward now, his tone shifting, less superior, more measured. "There's no need for this to become uncomfortable," he said, but it already had. And that discomfort, it mattered. I folded my hands, my voice steady. "For clarity," I said, "I spent 32 years building a logistics company across 3 regions. I sold it 12 years ago. I let that sit. No debt, no investors, no reliance on appearances." Marceline's expression didn't fully hold this time. "I chose a quiet life," I continued, "not a limited one." Across the table, Calum exhaled slowly, like pieces were finally falling into place. "You never told me," he said. "I didn't need to," I answered. "You were building your own life." Then his eyes shifted to Ceres. Not angry, not yet, but searching. "Did you agree with them?" he asked quietly. That question landed heavier than anything I had said. Ceres hesitated, and in that hesitation, the answer formed on its own. "I didn't stop them," she admitted. That was enough. The consequences unfolded right there. No drama, no raised voices, just clarity. Calum leaned back, creating space, not just physically but emotionally. "I can't move forward like this," he said. "Not until I understand what matters more." "Here," Marceline tried to intervene, her tone suddenly softer, almost persuasive. "We only want what's best." "What's best?" Calum interrupted. "Or what looks best?" No one answered. Outside the restaurant, the night air felt different, quieter, honest. Calum stood beside me, hands in his pockets. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" he asked. I looked ahead, not at him. "Because people are always honest when they think you have nothing to offer." He nodded slowly. He understood now. Not just what happened, but why. In the weeks that followed, things shifted. The wedding plans were paused indefinitely, not cancelled, but no longer certain. Ceres began distancing herself from her parents' influence, forced to confront what she had ignored. The Drows. Their tone changed completely, but it no longer carried weight, because once someone shows you how they measure people, you don't forget it. As for me, nothing changed, not really. Same coat, same quiet life, same choices. Just one difference. Now, my son saw the world a little more clearly, and that was worth far more than anything that had been sitting on that table